Hi guys, Sam from Manfa's makes. Happy Sunday! I hope your weekend is going fabulously and I hope you have managed to get some wonderful time on all your projects. So, hi to all my returners. Hey to any newbies. It's so great to have you. If you are new here on a Saturday and a Sunday, I read you some stories from this book, which is Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. There is a playlist on my channel should you wish to go back and listen to some of the stories you may have missed. And I also read The Wizard of Oz, which is in a separate playlist. Also, as always, guys, my little disclaimer. This book was written many years ago, so any hidden messages, themes, that kind of thing is that of the authors only. I am literally just reading you the words off of the page. So, shall we crack on, guys? So, we start today on story 64, which is called The Golden Goose. There was a man who had 3 sons, the youngest of whom was called Dummling, and was despised, mocked, and put down on every occasion. It happened that the eldest wanted to go into the forest to hew wood, and before he went his mother gave him a beautiful sweet cake and a bottle of wine so that he might not suffer from hunger or thirst. When he entered the forest he met a little grey-haired old man, who bade him good day, and said, "Do give me a piece of cake out of your pocket, and let me have a drink of your wine. I am so hungry and thirsty." But the prudent youth answered, "If I give you my cake and wine, I shall have none for myself. Be off with you." And he left the little man standing and went on. But when he began to hew down a tree, it was not long before he made a false stroke, and the axe cut him in the arm, so that he had to go home and have it bound up. And this was the little grey man's doing. After this the second son went into the forest, and his mother gave him, like the eldest, a cake and a bottle of wine. The little old grey man met him likewise, and asked him for a piece of cake and a drink of wine. But the second son too said with much reason, "What I give you will be taken away from myself. Be off." And he left the little man standing and went on. His punishment, however, was not delayed. When he had made a few strokes at the tree, he struck himself in the leg, so that he had to be carried home. Then Dummling said, "Father, do let me go and cut wood." The father answered, "Your brothers have hurt themselves by it. Leave it alone. You do not understand anything about it." But Dummling begged so long that at last he said, "Just go then. You will get wiser by hurting yourself." His mother gave him a cake made with water and baked in the cinders, and with it a bottle of sour beer. When he came to the forest, the little old grey man met him likewise, and greeting him said, "Give me a piece of your cake and a drink out of your bottle. I am so hungry and thirsty." Dummling answered, "I have only cinder cake and sour beer. If that pleases you, we will sit down and eat." So they sat down, and when Dummling pulled out his cinder cake, it was a fine sweet cake, and the sour beer had become good wine. So they ate and drank, and after that the little man said, "Since you have a good heart and are willing to divide what you have, I will give you good luck. There stands an old tree. Cut it down and you will find something at the roots." Then the little man took leave of him. Dummling went and cut down the tree, and when it fell, there was a goose sitting in the roots with feathers of pure gold. He lifted her up, and taking her with him, went to an inn where he thought he would stay the night. Now the host had 3 daughters who saw the goose and were curious to know what wonderful kind of bird it might be, and would have liked to have one of its golden feathers. The eldest thought, "I shall soon find an opportunity of pulling out a feather," and as soon as Dummling had gone out she seized the goose by the wing, but her finger and hand remained sticking fast to it. The second came soon afterwards, thinking only of how she might get a feather for herself, but she had scarcely touched her sister than she was held fast. At last the third also came with the same intent, and the others screamed out, "Keep away, for goodness' sake, keep away!" But she did not understand why she was to keep away. "The others are there," she thought, "I may as well be there too," and ran to them. But as soon as she touched her sister, she remained sticking fast to her, so they had to spend the night with the goose. The next morning Dummling took the goose under his arm and set out, without troubling himself about the 3 girls who were hanging on to it. They were obliged to run after him continually, now left, now right, just as he was inclined to go. In the middle of the fields the parson met them, And when he saw the procession, he said, "For shame, you good-for-nothing girls! Why are you running across the fields after this young man? Is that seemly?" At the same time, he seized the youngest by the hand in order to pull her away, but as soon as he touched her, he likewise stuck fast and was himself obliged to run behind. Before long, the sexton came by and saw his master the parson running behind 3 girls. He was astonished at this and called out, "Ho, your reverence, where do you go so quickly? Do not forget that we have a christening today." And running after him, he took him by the sleeve, but was also held fast to it. While the 5 were trotting one behind the other, 2 labourers came by with their hoes from the fields. The parson called out to them and begged that they would set him and the sexton free. But they had scarcely touched the sexton when they were held fast, and now there were 7 of them running behind Dummling and the goose. Soon afterwards he came to a city where a king ruled, who had a daughter who was so serious that no one could make her laugh. So he had put forth a decree that whoever should be able to make her laugh should marry her. When Dummling heard this, he went with his goose and all her train before the king's daughter, and as soon as she saw the 7 people running on, one behind the other, she began to laugh quite loudly, and as if she would never leave off. Upon this, Dummling asked to have her for his wife, and the wedding was celebrated. After the king's death, Dummling inherited the kingdom and lived a long time contentedly with his wife. Okie dokie. The next story, story 65, it's called Thousandfurs. There was once upon a time a king who had a wife with golden hair, and she was so beautiful that her equal was not to be found on earth. It came to pass that she lay ill, excuse me, and as she felt that she must soon die, she called the king and said, "If you wish to marry again after my death, she must be as beautiful as I am and have such golden hair as I have. This you must promise me." And after the king had promised her this, she closed her eyes and died. For a long time the king could not be comforted, and had no thought of taking another wife. At length his counsellors said, "There is no helping it. The king must marry again, that we may have a queen." And now messengers were sent about far and wide to seek a bride who equalled the late queen in beauty. In the whole world, however, none was to be found, and even if one had been found, still there would have been no one who had such golden hair. So the messengers came home as they went. Now the king had a daughter who was just as beautiful as her dead mother and had the same golden hair. When she was grown up, the king looked at her one day and saw that in every respect she was like his late wife, and suddenly felt a violent love for her. Then he said to his counsellors, "I will marry my daughter, for she is the counterpart of my late wife. Otherwise I can find no bride who resembles her." When the counsellors heard that, they were shocked and said, "God has forbidden a father to marry his daughter. No good can come from such a crime, and the kingdom will be involved in the ruin." The daughter was still more shocked when she became aware of her father's resolution, but hoped to change his mind. Then she said to him, "Before I fulfill your wish, I must have 3 dresses, one as golden as the sun, one as silvery as the moon, and one as bright as the stars. Besides this, I wish for a mantle of 1,000 different kinds of fur and hair joined together, and one of every kind of animal in your kingdom must give a piece of his skin for it." But she thought, "To get that will be quite impossible, and thus I shall divert my father from his wicked intentions." The king, however, did not give it up, and the cleverest maidens in his kingdom had to weave the 3 dresses, one as golden as the sun, one as silvery as the moon, and one as bright as the stars, and his hunters had to catch one of every kind of animal in the whole of his kingdom, and take from it a piece of its skin, and out of these was made a mantle of 1,000 different kinds of fur. At length, when all was ready, the king had the mantle brought, spread it out before her, and said, "The wedding shall be tomorrow." When the king's daughter saw that there was no longer any hope of turning her father's heart, she resolved to run away from him. In the night, while everyone was asleep, she got up and took 3 different things from her treasures: a golden ring, a golden spinning wheel, and a golden reel. The 3 dresses of the sun, moon, and stars she put into a nutshell, put on her mantle of all kinds of fur, and blackened her face and hands with soot. Then she commended herself to God and went away, and walked the whole night until she reached a great forest. And as she was tired, she got into a hollow tree and fell asleep. The sun rose and she slept on, and she was still sleeping when it was full day. Then it so happened that the king to whom this forest belonged was hunting in it. When his dogs came to the tree, they sniffed and ran barking round about it. The king said to the hunters, "Just see what kind of wild beast has hidden itself in there." The hunters obeyed his order, and when they came back they said, "A wondrous beast is lying in the hollow tree. We have never before seen one like it. Its skin is fur of 1,000 different kinds, but it is lying asleep." Said the king, "See if you can catch it alive, and then fasten it to the carriage, and we will take it with us." When the hunters laid hold of the maiden, she awoke full of terror and cried to them, "I am a poor child, deserted by father and mother. Have pity on me and take me with you." Then said they, "Thousandfurs, you will be useful in the kitchen. Come with us and you can sweep up the ashes." So they put her in the carriage and took her home to the royal palace. There they pointed out to her a closet under the stairs where no daylight entered, and said, "Hairy animal, there you can live and sleep." Then she was sent into the kitchen, and there she carried wood and water, swept the hearth, plucked the fowls, picked the vegetables, raked the ashes, and did all the dirty work. Thousandfurs lived there for a long time in great wretchedness. "Alas, fair princess, what is to become of you now?" It happened, however, that one day a feast was held in the palace, and she said to the cook, "May I go upstairs for a while and look on? I will place myself outside the door." The cook answered, "Yes, go, but you must be back here in half an hour to sweep the hearth." Then she took her oil lamp, went into her den, took off her fur dress, and washed the soot off her face and hands, so that her full beauty once more came to light. And she opened the nut and took out her dress, which shone like the sun. And when she had done that, she went up to the festival, and everyone made way for her, for no one knew her, and thought no otherwise than that she was a king's daughter. The king came to meet her, gave his hand to her, and danced with her, and thought in his heart, "My eyes have never yet seen anyone so beautiful." When the dance was over, she curtsied, and when the king looked round again, she had vanished, and no one knew where. The guards who stood outside the palace were called and questioned, but no one had seen her. She had, however, run into her little den, had quickly taken off her dress, made her face and hands black again, put on the fur mantle, and again was Thousandfurs. And now when she went into the kitchen and was about to get to her work and sweep up the ashes, the cook said, "Leave that alone till morning, and make me the soup for the king. I too will go upstairs a while and take a look, but let no hairs fall in, or in future you shall have nothing to eat." So the cook went away, and Thousandfurs made the soup for the king, and made the bread soup the best she could. And when it was ready, she fetched a golden ring from her little den and put it in the bowl in which the soup was served. When the dancing was over, the king had his soup brought and ate it, and he liked it so much that it seemed to him he had never tasted better. But when he came to the bottom of the bowl, he saw a golden ring, and could not conceive how it could have got there. Then he ordered the cook to appear before him. The cook was terrified when he heard the order, and said to Thousandfurs, "You have certainly let a hair fall into the soup, and if you have, you shall be beaten for it." When he came before the king, the latter asked who had made the soup. The cook replied, "I made it." But the king said, "That is not true, for it was much better than usual, and cooked differently." He answered, "I must acknowledge that I did not make it. It was made by the rough animal." The king said, "Go and bid it come up here." When Thousandfurs came, the king said, "Who are you?" "I am a poor girl who no longer has any father or mother." He asked further, "Of what use are you in my palace?" She answered, "I am good for nothing but to have boots thrown at my head." He continued, "Where did you get the ring which was in the soup?" She answered, "I know nothing about the ring." So the king could learn nothing and had to send her away again. After a while there was another festival, and then, as before, Thousandfurs begged the cook for leave to go and look on. He answered yes, but came back again in half an hour and made the king the bread soup which he so much likes. Then she ran into her den, washed herself quickly, and took out of the nut the dress which was as silvery as the moon, and put it on. Then she went up and was like a princess, and the king stepped forward to meet her and rejoiced to see her once more, and as the dance was just beginning they danced it together. But when it ended, she again disappeared so quickly that the king could not observe where she went. She, however, sprang into her den and once more made herself a hairy animal and went into the kitchen to prepare the bread soup. When the cook had gone upstairs, she fetched the little golden spinning wheel and put it in the bowl so that the soup covered it. Then it was taken to the king, who ate it, and liked it as much as before, and had the cook brought, who this time likewise was forced to confess that Thousandfurs had prepared the soup. Thousandfurs again came before the king, but she answered that she was good for nothing else but to have boots thrown at her head, and that she knew nothing at all about the little golden spinning wheel. When, for the third time, the king held a festival, all happened just as it had done before. The cook said, "Surely, Roughskin, you are a witch, and always put something in the soup which makes it so good that the king likes it better than that which I cook." But as she begged so hard, he let her go up at the appointed time. And now she put on the dress which shone like the stars, and thus entered the hall. Again the king danced with the beautiful maiden, and thought that she had never yet been so beautiful. And while she was dancing, he contrived, without her noticing it, to slip a golden ring on her finger, and he had given orders that the dance should last a very long time. When it ended, he wanted to hold her fast by her hands, but she tore herself loose and sprang away so quickly through the crowd that she vanished from his sight. She ran as fast as she could into her den beneath the stairs, but as she had been too long and had stayed more than half an hour, she could not take off her pretty dress, but only threw over it her fur mantle, and in her haste she did not make herself quite black, but one finger remained white. Then Thousandfurs ran into the kitchen and cooked the bread soup for the king, and as the cook was away, put her golden reel into it. When the king found the reel at the bottom of it, he had Thousandfurs summoned, and then he spied the white finger and saw the ring which he had put on it during the dance. Then he grasped her by the hand and held her fast, and when she wanted to release herself and run away, her mantle of fur opened a little, and the star dress shone forth. The king clutched the mantle and tore it off. Then her golden hair shone forth, and she stood there in full splendour, and could no longer hide herself. And when she had washed the soot and ashes from her face, she was more beautiful than anyone who had ever been seen on earth. The king said, "You are my dear bride, and we will never again part from each other." Thereupon the marriage was solemnized, and they lived happily until their death. Okay, and the last story for today, it is a super short one, so maybe we can squeeze in another two. Go on, seeing as it's the weekend. Okay, so story 66, The Hare's Bride. There was once a woman and her daughter who lived in a pretty garden with cabbages, and a little hare came into it, and during the winter time ate all the cabbages. Then says the mother to the daughter, "Go into the garden and chase the hare away." The girl says to the little hare, "Shh, shh, hare, you are still eating up all our cabbages." Says the hare, "Come, maiden, and seat yourself on my little hare's tail, and come with me into my little hare's hut." The girl would not do it. Next day the hare comes again and eats the cabbages. Then says the mother to the daughter, "Go into the garden and drive the hare away." The girl says to the hare, "Shh, shh, little hare, you are still eating all the cabbages." The little hare says, "Maiden, seat yourself on my little hare's tail, and come with me into my little hare's hut." The maiden refuses. The third day the hare comes again and eats the cabbages. At this the mother says to the daughter, "Go into the garden and chase the hare away." Says the maiden, "Shh, shh, little hare, you are still eating all our cabbages." Says the little hare, "Come, maiden, seat yourself on my little hare's tail, and come with me into my little hare's hut." The girl seats herself on the little hare's tail, and then the hare takes her far away to his little hut and says, "Now cook green cabbage and millet seed, and I will invite the wedding guests." Then all the wedding guests assembled. Who were the wedding guests? That I can tell you, as another told it to me. They were all hares, and the crow was there as parson to marry the bride and bridegroom, and the fox as clerk, and the altar was under the rainbow. The girl, however, was sad, for she was all alone. The little hare comes and says, open the doors, the wedding guests are merry." The bride says nothing but weeps. The little hare goes away. The little hare comes back and says, take off the lid, the wedding guests are hungry." The bride again says nothing and weeps. The little hare goes away. The little hare comes back and says, take off the lid, the wedding guests are waiting." Then the bride says nothing, and the hare goes away, but she dresses a straw doll in her clothes and gives her a spoon to stir with, and sets her by the pan with the millet seed and goes back to her mother. The little hare comes once more and says, take off the lid, and gets up and strikes the doll on the head so that her cap falls off. Then the little hare sees that it is not his bride and goes away and is sorrowful. Strange tale. Okay, and your bonus one for today is story 67, The 12 Hunters. There was once a king's son who was betrothed to a maiden whom he loved very much. And when he was sitting beside her and very happy, news came that his father lay sick and dying, and desired to see him once again before his end. Then he said to his beloved, I must go now and leave you. I give you a ring as a remembrance of me. When I am king, I will return and fetch you. So he rode away, and when he reached his father, the latter was dangerously ill and near his death. He said to him, Dear son, I wish to see you once again before my end. Promise me to marry as I wish. And he named a certain king's daughter who was to be his wife. The son was so upset that he did not think what he was doing, and said, Yes, dear father, your will shall be done. And then the king shut his eyes and died. When the son had been proclaimed king, and the time of mourning was over, he was forced to keep the promise which he had given his father, and sent to the king's daughter to ask her hand in marriage, and she was promised to him. His first betrothed heard of this, and fretted so much about his faithlessness that she nearly died. Then her father said to her, Dearest child, why are you so sad? You shall have whatever you want. She thought for a moment and said, Dear father, I wish for 11 girls exactly like myself in face, figure and size. The father says, If it is possible, your desire shall be fulfilled. And he ordered a search to be made of his whole kingdom until 11 young maidens were found who exactly resembled his daughter in face, figure and size. When they came to the king's daughter, she had 12 suits of hunter's clothes made, all alike, and the 11 maidens had to put on the hunter's clothes, and she herself put on the 12th suit. Then she took leave of her father and rode away with them, and rode to the court of her former betrothed whom she loved so dearly. Then she inquired if he required any hunters, and if he would take the whole of them into his service. The king looked at her and did not know her, but as they were such handsome fellows, he said yes, and that he would willingly take them, and now they were the king's 12 hunters. The king, however, had a lion, which was a wondrous animal, for he knew all concealed and secret things. It came to pass that one evening he said to the king, You think you have 12 hunters? Yes, said the king, they are 12 hunters. The lion continued, You are mistaken, they are 12 girls. The king said, That cannot be true. How will you prove that to me? Oh, just let some peas be strewn in your anteroom, answered the lion, and then you will soon see it. Men have a firm step, and when they walk over the peas, none of them stir, but girls trip and skip and drag their feet, and the peas roll about. The king was well pleased with the counsel, and caused the peas to be strewn. There was, however, a servant of the king's who favoured the hunters, and when he heard that they were going to be put to this test, he went to them and repeated everything, and said, The lion wants to make the king believe that you are girls. Then the king's daughter thanked him, and said to her maidens, Have some strength and step firmly on the peas. So next morning, when the king had the 12 hunters called before him, and they came into the anteroom where the peas were lying, they stepped so firmly on them, and had such a strong, sure walk, that not one of the peas either rolled or stirred. Then they went away again, and the king said to the lion, You have lied to me, they walk just like men. The lion said, They have got to know that they were going to be put to the test, and have assumed some strength. Just let 12 spinning wheels be brought into the anteroom some day, and they will go to them and be pleased with them, and that is what no man would do. The king liked the advice and had the spinning wheels placed in the anteroom. But the servant, who was well disposed to the hunters, went to them and disclosed the project. Then, when they were alone, the king's daughter said to her 11 girls, Have some constraint on yourselves, and do not look round at the spinning wheels. And next morning, when the king had his 12 hunters summoned, they went through the anteroom and never once looked at the spinning wheels. Then the king again said to the lion, You have deceived me, they are men, for they have not looked at the spinning wheels. The lion replied, They have learnt that they were going to be put to the test and have restrained themselves. The king, however, would no longer believe the lion. The 12 hunters always followed the king to the chase, and his liking for them continually increased. Now it came to pass that once when they were out hunting, news came that the king's betrothed was approaching. When the true bride heard that, it hurt her so much that her heart was almost broken, and she fell fainting to the ground. The king thought something had happened to his dear hunter, ran up to him, wanted to help him, and drew his glove off. Then he saw the ring which he had given to his first bride, and when he looked in her face he recognized her. Then his heart was so touched that he kissed her, and when she opened her eyes he said, "You are mine and I am yours, and no one in the world can alter that." He sent a messenger to the other bride and entreated her to return to her own kingdom, for he had a wife already, and a man who had just found an old dish did not require a new one. Soon the wedding was celebrated, and the lion was again taken into favour, because after all, he had told the truth. So there we have it, guys. 4 stories today. That's absolutely awesome. So I hope the rest of your weekend is a wonderful one. I hope you're getting some lovely quality time doing your projects. There will be lots more content to come this week. I believe tomorrow's video is a Happy Mail video, and after that I have nothing scheduled and nothing done, so not even I know what's going to happen over here at Manfa's Makes this week. I'm sure it'll be fun, whatever it is. Anyway, guys, I love you so, so much. As always, stay safe, be kind, look after one another, get some good quality time in with your loved ones, and get some good quality crafty time in. And I will see you in the next one or around the YouTube streets. Love you guys.